My wife got pregnant by her boss and said, it's easier than being poor. She doesn't know his wife is my ex, and we hired a lawyer together last week. I'm 35M, married to Jenna, 34F, and we've been together for nearly a decade. No kids, by choice, or at least, that's what I thought. We live in Atlanta, where I work as a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech firm. Life used to be quiet, steady, maybe even a little boring, but I was okay with boring. Boring meant safe, stable, predictable. Until 2 months ago, when the first fracture appeared. It was small at first. Jenna started spending more time at work. Late nights, early mornings, team expansion, she said, new clients. But her stories didn't always line up, and she'd come home distracted, glowing with energy that didn't belong to me anymore. One night I asked if everything was okay. She smiled, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Don't worry, everything's working out better than I expected." That word better kept echoing in my head. Better than what? Jenna worked for a boutique real estate firm. Her boss, Mark Ellison, was one of those polished types. Always a blazer, always a tan, always grinning like he owned the world. I'd met him once, at a holiday party. He shook my hand, looked through me, then poured Jenna a drink before I could even offer. That was nearly a year ago. Back then I thought he was just a narcissist. Now I'm not so sure he didn't know exactly what he was doing. The moment everything shifted came on a rainy Tuesday. I had a short day at work, and came home around 3 p.m. The house was quiet except for Jenna's voice, muffled, coming from the kitchen. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the tone, it stopped me cold. I'm just saying, I can't keep lying to him forever. He's going to notice. And anyway, what's done is done. It's easier this way. A long pause. No, I haven't told him it's yours. Why complicate things? She ended the call before I could move, then walked straight into me. Her eyes widened for half a second, just enough to register that I'd heard something I wasn't supposed to. But she didn't stammer or apologize. She just tilted her head and asked, "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," I said, but the words felt hollow. She turned away. "It's not what you think." Of course it wasn't. It never is. That night she sat me down like she was leading a business meeting. "I'm pregnant," she said, like it was some kind of press release. "And before you ask, no, it's not yours." I felt the breath leave my body. "Whose is it?" She hesitated for only a moment before shrugging. "Mark's." Mark, her boss. "I didn't plan it," she said, "but I also didn't stop it. And honestly, it's not the worst thing. He's successful, generous, he wants to take care of me. You've always meant well, but you play life too safe. This baby is a step up for both of us." She paused, like she was weighing whether to say the next part out loud. Then, with a shrug that could have frozen a fire, she added, "It's easier than being poor." She smiled as if that somehow made it better. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood up and left the room. The following days were a blur. Jenna acted like nothing had changed. She still made smoothies in the morning, still watched her murder mysteries at night, but everything about her had shifted. Her posture, her tone, the way she looked at me, like I was some mild inconvenience she had to phase out slowly, and she stopped wearing her wedding ring. A week later, she came home with a new phone. Work issued, she claimed, but she wouldn't let me near it. I didn't push, I just started watching more closely. By the third week, I'd noticed a pattern. She only ever left the room to take certain calls. She kept a second credit card in her coat pocket, one I hadn't seen before. And then there was the receipt. It fluttered out of her purse one evening, like fate wanted me to see it. "Dinner for two at a French place uptown. Date 2 nights ago, signed J. Ellison." When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. "You're acting like I'm cheating on you," she said. "I told you the truth. I'm just making the best of the situation." "But we're still married," I said. She laughed. Not for much longer. That was when I realized something. She wasn't just leaving me for another man. She was upgrading. In her eyes, I was the practice husband, the stepping stone, the safe bet she could afford to outgrow. The realization hit me harder than the betrayal itself. But what she didn't know, what she still didn't know, was that Mark's wife had her own history with me. After her confession, the house turned cold. Jenna moved into the guest room without a word of guilt or apology, just a shrug and, "It's already decided." She went about her routines like normal morning omelets, blow-drying her hair, packing boxes she didn't try to hide. I barely spoke. I watched. Every casual movement screamed that she'd already crossed over to the other side. The emotional divorce was done. I was just a technicality. That's when I started my own process. Not with shouting, not with begging, with a folder. It started with the name, Ame. I saw it in her laptop calendar. OBGYN appointment, 9:30 a.m., marked with M. A week after she told me the baby wasn't mine. I didn't ask who M was. I already knew. When she came home with a gift bag, I said nothing. She pulled out a tiny white onesie. "Daddy's investment," written in gold letters. That told me everything. I didn't break down. I opened a new Google Drive folder, labeled Exit Strategy. Then I made a call to Kara, her old co-worker who'd been laid off but still kept tabs on office gossip. I played it cool, just wondering, how close are Jenna and Mark these days? Kara snorted. "You mean how long have they been screwing? Everyone knows. She even drove his car to work one morning, said he left the keys in her bag." I thanked her and hung up. The next day I checked our finances. Jenna had opened 2 new credit cards within the last 3 months. Thousands in charges, restaurants, event tickets, boutique shops, nothing for the house, nothing for us. I froze my credit, changed every password, stopped my paycheck from hitting our joint account. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand. "There's a weird hold on our checking account," she said flatly. "Did you do something?" I didn't even look up. "Yeah, reallocated the funds, temporarily." Her eyes narrowed. "You know that affects me too, right?" I finally met her gaze. "Exactly." She didn't reply, just grabbed her bag and walked out 15 minutes early. And for once, she closed the door gently. No dramatic exit, just gone. I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm, like I was slowly peeling back a mask I hadn't realized she'd been wearing for years. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. Woman's voice. Measured, familiar. "Hi, is this Daniel Hart?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" A pause. "You might remember me. It's Madison." I went still. "My ex, the woman I almost married 10 years ago. I think we need to talk," she said. "It's about your wife." I didn't say anything. She continued. "Can we meet? Somewhere quiet. Tomorrow." I agreed. We picked a cafe across town. Neutral ground. She wouldn't tell me more over the phone. Madison looked almost exactly the same. A little older, a little more composed, but the same sharpness in her eyes. She wore a navy coat, hair pulled back like always. I sat across from her at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, unsure what to say first. She broke the silence. "I wouldn't have reached out if it weren't important." I nodded slowly. "You said it's about Jenna." Madison exhaled. "Mark, my husband, your wife's boss." Just hearing it out loud made my throat tighten. "I found out 3 weeks ago," she said, pulling a small folder from her bag. "Hotel receipts, messages. There's no guessing. It's her, Jenna." I opened the folder. The first page. A reservation at the Ashford Grand downtown. Mark Ellison, 1 night, 2 guests, under special requests, extra pillows, vegan breakfast. That matched Jenna to the letter. The next was a printout of a message from Mark's company email, forwarded to a personal Gmail. "Same sweet Friday. I'll bring the champagne. You wear that green thing again." No names. But then the last message, a picture of a sonogram, captioned, 12 weeks today, your legacy. I stared at the grainy black and white image. Madison watched me closely. "You didn't know," she said gently. "No," I whispered. "I knew she was pregnant. I just didn't know." "She told him." "She told him enough," Madison said. "He doesn't want the baby, by the way. That's the fun twist. He said he'll help her quietly, but wants to stay married." I laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. "So what does Jenna get? A baby and a ruined marriage?" Madison tilted her head. "No, she gets money. Or at least she thinks she will. Mark's offered her some kind of transition package to keep quiet. An apartment lease, monthly cash, even said he'd cover prenatal care privately. Is that legal?" I asked. "Only if I let it be." She leaned forward. "That's where you come in." I blinked. "Me? We're married to 2 people who've dragged us into a private con job. Mark's afraid of scandal. So is Jenna, I imagine. But if we work together, we don't just end their game. We flip the whole board." She explained the plan. "We'd gather everything. Financials, messages, patterns. My half, her half. We'd document the deception, the paper trails, the intentional silence. Then through Madison's lawyer, a sharp guy named Lennox, we'd position ourselves for legal protection and leverage. It's not revenge," Madison said. "It's preparation. If Mark tries to hide assets, or if Jenna tries to bleed you in the divorce, this gives us power." I sat back, stunned. "You've really thought this through." Madison smiled faintly. "I've had time. You don't live with a liar for a year and not build a few contingency folders." We talked for an hour. By the end, she emailed me a link to a shared encrypted drive. I went home and began uploading what I had. Screenshots, receipts, Jenna's calendar, photos of packages from upscale boutiques I never paid for. By midnight, our drive had over 60 files, and counting. The next few days were a quiet storm. Jenna noticed I was colder. She asked if I was talking to someone. I didn't lie. I just said I've got a lot on my plate right now. One morning, I caught her checking my phone screen while pretending to tie her shoe. I didn't confront her. I just watched how fast she turned when I caught her eye. But the real shock came on a Thursday evening. Jenna was on the phone in the kitchen, pacing like usual. I was upstairs in the hallway, just out of view. "I'm not stalling," she whispered harshly. "He's just being slow to unravel." Then silence. "Because if I rush, he'll lawyer up, and I need the clean exit. If you want this to work, Mark, let me handle it." She paused. "Yes, I still have access to the account. Yes, I moved the insurance papers. No, he hasn't noticed." My fists clenched. I went back to my room and wrote everything down while it was still fresh. Jenna wasn't just cheating. She was planning something worse than betrayal. And I was running out of time. But so was she. Because the next name on my call list wasn't Madison. It was Lennox. Lennox had the kind of presence that made even silence feel legally binding. He was in his early 50s and spoke like every word had been pre-approved by a judge. He reviewed our file without saying much. Page after page of emails, credit card statements, appointment logs, Jenna's secret purchases, Mark's financial offers, the sonogram photo, my recordings, Madison's printouts. When I brought up what I overheard in the hallway, that Jenna still had access to the joint account, that she'd moved insurance documents, he finally looked up. That's not just deception, he said. That's premeditated financial maneuvering. If she's moving things to isolate you, or funneling resources behind your back, we might be in marital fraud territory. I let that sit for a moment. She thinks I'm asleep, I told him. But every time she thinks I've checked out, she does something risky. Good, he said. Let her keep going. Because now, we're watching. Lennox had a plan. Surgical and calm. He'd start with a notice of separation. Clean and formal. No accusations yet. Just enough to freeze joint activity and force Jenna to respond on paper. That would let us access financial discovery without her seeing it coming. Madison would file simultaneously. 2 cases, 2 partners, 1 goal. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in silence. I didn't confront Jenna. I didn't flinch when she took longer calls in the bathroom. I let her believe I was emotionally checked out. Meanwhile, Madison and I stayed in sync. We logged everything. That's when I found the hidden account. It came up as a line item in a bank transfer log, an unfamiliar Chase routing number tied to a business account named J. Harding Consulting, Jenna's maiden name. The consulting was new, a shell. I asked Lennox. He nodded. She's preparing to exit with your money. That's why she hasn't pushed for divorce yet. She's waiting for you to give up. I didn't give up. Instead, I went to my HR department and rerouted my health insurance and emergency contacts. Then I closed the small account we'd opened when we first got married, where we used to deposit our fun money. I left 4.113 in it. She noticed. That night she brought me a cup of tea. That hadn't happened in months. I know things have been tense, she said, voice sugar-coated. But maybe we shouldn't rush anything legal. Maybe we just step back for a bit, see what happens. I watched her over the rim of my mug. You mean like a pause? Exactly, she smiled. You've been so stressed. It's not good for you. I nodded slowly. She didn't know I had already signed the papers. She didn't know Lennox was filing in the morning. The next evening, everything erupted. Jenna came home from work furious. She tossed her keys onto the counter hard enough to make the ceramic bowl jump. You filed on me? So much for the soft pause. I stayed seated. Yeah, you were going to drain the account. I figured it was time. You went behind my back. You were already living behind mine. That shut her up for a second. Then she said it. I'm carrying a child. Your child. And you're sabotaging his future because you're bitter. She played that card like it was her last. But she didn't expect me to reach for my phone and pull up the email from Madison, the one with the paternity test results from the prenatal sample Mark insisted on. I turned the screen toward her. Not mine, I said. And you already knew that. Her face didn't crumple. It hardened. You've been talking to her. Yeah, and her lawyer. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard in weeks. I want you out, I said. You can take your shell company, your green dress, your future real estate empire, but you're leaving this house. She didn't move. She just stared at me with the expression of someone who'd spent months building a new life and had just realized the foundation was fake. I have nowhere to go. Funny, I said. That's exactly what I thought when you told me about Mark. She didn't pack that night. She just went back to the guest room, shut the door, and didn't come out until morning. When she did, she left without saying a word. The last thing I heard from Jenna was the sound of her suitcase dragging across our hardwood floor. No apology, no thank you, just silence. I stood in the living room, watching her walk out of our life without so much as a glance back. She had no idea that by then I'd already handed over evidence of her financial games to Mark's company. The same week her upgrade was supposed to become real life, everything came crashing down. Mark was let go, not fired publicly of course, just reassigned to a non-existent internal role. His family, who held major stakes in the firm, had seen the proof, the fake consulting payments to Jenna, the hush money disguised as business expenses, and worst of all, the pregnancy. He signed a quiet agreement with Jenna, promising to support her without notifying the board. Madison didn't hold back. She hired forensic accountants. Within days, the IRS opened an inquiry. Turns out, Mark's so-called payments to Jenna weren't just immoral, they were illegal. Jenna never had a registered consulting business, and now the IRS wanted to know why she received thousands in undeclared income. Meanwhile, I kept my distance and let the chaos unfold. Lennox froze Jenna's access to our old accounts, including the rainy day fund she assumed I'd forgotten. She couldn't even cover the deposit on the new apartment she'd planned to move into with Mark's money. In the end, she crawled back to her sister's place on the east side, an apartment she once described as the kind of place ambition goes to die.